Probably how you remember seeing the Earth up high from a passenger plane, your plane, or somebody else's plane that you've actually flown in. This is basically what everybody remembers. This is why there's such controversy between a flat Earth and a globe Earth, a dome Earth. I've heard being called several different things. And part of that is because there's a lot of speculation as to what the actual surface looks like, because we've never seen one full image of the Earth from a distance to say one thing versus another. All we have are images. And when the government or any of the other international organizations show us an image of the Earth, it's usually via a fisheye lens. So it gives a it gives a curvature, and basically that's not what we see here. This is somebody took a picture out a window. This is another picture taken from somebody's camera outside of a jet. As you can see, there's a little curvature. You can see that the clouds actually do bump up a little, but for the most part it's pretty solid. That's how we imagine the Earth to look, whether it's a dome, whether it's flat. Have a little raise here and a little raise here as the clouds touch it. But notice something. This is it right here. This is the surface, and this is where it ends. And this is kind of where it all begins, folks. The mystery. Is it flat? Is it dome-shaped? We know the globe is out, but questions remain, folks. Now, this one here I happen to love. I can't really get too big because it distorts the image. So I will show it at this point right here. This is from the ESA, European Space Agency. This photo right here probably has some kind of a fisheye lens, and you can see somebody took it out of a window of one of the shuttles or something else along that side, probably the ISS. But this is about roughly 110 miles up. As you can see, there's a little bit of a curve, but it isn't significant enough. You can see that the raised areas here of the clouds are different than the clouds on the ground, are different than the land. So you see that there are layers. And this is nice on the horizon, but it's also kind of flat. Okay. Now, this one I love most, because if you flip it around like this, you basically get the idea that you're looking at a flat surface, and the only difference is it's actually turned on its side. Now, this horizon here, there's no fisheye lens. There's nothing like that. This area is very, very flat, folks. This is probably how the Earth actually looks from space without them editing it for photography purposes using a flat fisheye lens or anything else. See this area down here? This whole area right here? This is a landmass right here. This is cloud, 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 higher up cloud, some kind of weather front over here. But I imagine, folks, this is the way it looks to everybody from space. Now you could say the Van Halen, you could say the belt with the radiation and everything and this and that, but I do believe that there is an area above the Earth where we can use our radio equipment and everything else. So, also, if you read any of the major newsletters, they say that the radiation belt is not so much a big deal as long as you're protected, which you are in most cases. Alright, now this one here, this one's great. This one shows these guys using a fisheye lens. See the curvature of the Earth? You don't get that from anything major. But you still have the respectful clouds here on the upper part. And you can actually make out almost all the features of the Earth down here. From that high up, you can make out what that is or isn't. You can kind of see a camera or a spacesuit or something over here from a reflection. But if you look hard enough, folks, you can see the ground from here. This is just distorted using a fisheye lens. I guarantee that. I almost guarantee that. Now, this is what we're told the Earth looks like as it is flat. This is a flat Earth map, as it were. As you see, the continents we're told are here, the North Pole is here, except instead of there being a South Pole, the South Pole actually wraps all the way around the Earth. Well, that's wrong, you say. Okay. Well, here's a map from roughly, I'd say probably about 16, 17, 1800s. And it basically shows the same thing. I'm not so sure they got the sun's dimensions right, but it shows that the sun is a lot closer than what we're being told. It says that the sun is 27 miles across. The sun's orbit shows the equator, South America, North Pole, Africa, Australia, everything else. I don't really like this map, but it's a nice representation of what people back then even thought they knew. Okay. Now, this one goes back to probably the same amount of time, except for this one is probably a copy made for people who actually understood everything at the time. Now, this was made something similar to a typewriter, if not something a little bit more better, or better by itself. Now, here's something funny. We see Asia, we see Europe, we see the Atlantic, we see the Pacific, we see Australia. It says South America, I think. But you get the idea on that. Okay, that says North America. That says South America. Now, here's the Indian Ocean, the Great Southern Ocean. I don't really remember reading about a Great Southern Ocean, but okay. Let's say that was something they called it back then. Now, look at something else, folks. Here's Southern ice, Southern ice, Southern ice, Southern ice. In other words, what's out there, and look at this. This is really weird. They show an island way out beyond what they call the inhabitable zone, or the place where all the numbers stop. That's very interesting. This is a little bit interesting. This little speck over here is interesting. It's all very interesting. Now, let's go on. Here's the UN flag. My goodness, what does this look like? Folks, this is the United Nations flag. The international body that controls all of the people that you and I have to deal with on a daily basis, whether or not we want to or not. These are the people that control the world as we know it, and the borders as we know it, the shape of the earth as we know it, and it gives them the authority over everybody because of the shape. Because there's nothing beyond the shape. The shape is the entire sum of its parts, and that is it. Yet their flag goes back to this. Kind of funny, huh, folks? Okay. You're not amused. Okay. Their symbol is, for the United Nations, is "We Believe." Okay. It's a nice symbol. Nice saying. Nice slogan. We believe in what? Flat Earth? Flat Earth? Maybe. What do they believe in? It's a good question. Now, here is the United Nations flag saying it's based on a flat Earth map. Why? Let me go back. This is pretty much the one that I would say the UN flag is based off of. In fact, let's look. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 circles outside the main one. We'll just count circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, now that has to be significant somewhere, folks. Okay, you ready to get your noodle baked? You ready to wonder what's actually going on? Okay, here we go. This is the world map as we know it today. This is all there is as we know it today. You've seen hundreds of these maps, so I'm not going to go over. This is nothing special. You see this every day, day in and day out. These are your boundaries, folks. This is it. It's all there is to see. Now, this was a photo taken in 1946 by some vehicle or vessel thereof that we sent up to take photos. This was actually the first photo ever taken October 24th of 1946. Notice the horizon stretches on and on. No fisheye lens. Yeah, unfortunately it's on its side, but what can you do, right? Right. Clouds are kind of above everything as it actually is. You can see some of the land masses. Now this next one's very, very, very interesting. This next one was taken in 1947, obviously better camera. Now the dispute with this, and I'll show you the originals and I'll source this and everything else. But the dispute with this is this was taken in 1947. This here looks like a shadow. What they're claiming that is, folks, is a canyon in California, not to be confused with the Grand Canyon in Arizona and Nevada. They're claiming this is some valley or something like that in California. What does that look like, folks? If this white representation here, 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 and here are the clouds. That looks like a shadow, folks. Notice the blackness over here, the blackness over there. Something is casting a shadow. More than likely, probably the vehicle that they launched this thing from. More than likely. But this was 1947, folks. Okay, still not convinced? And yes, there is a little bit of a horizon, but look. The clouds kind of bump up and go down, bump up and go down, bump up and go down. A little bit of a curvature, not much. The clouds still raise above the Earth. And supposedly, yes, this is the Earth. Over a desert-like region in California, supposedly. In 1947. Now, this is the one to bake your noodle. I can't find this map anywhere else. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on it. I found this when I was doing things before. I showed this when I put up the video on America 2.0, but I did not really explain it. I just put it up afterward because somebody wondered. Now, let me just go into the usual for you, okay? Here's the equator. We know this. Now, there is something called a Vendy yacht race, and it basically goes around the whole curvature of the Earth as we know it, assuming they even do a full circuit around the actual landmass. I believe this happens once a year. I think I've even known somebody who actually took part in it. You have to have the best boats, and you have to expect bad weather and everything else. Now, this hazy circle here is something or another around the waters that we know, and that's about 30,000 miles EST. Now, there is something else here, which is very weird. It's called a normative Vendée yacht race route. Folks, let me look at this for you, because these are the people who would actually know whether or not this southern pole piece actually exists. Now, I want you to research the possible Vendée yacht race route and the normative Vendée yacht race route. Because according to this here, if this is 30,000 miles established, then the normative Vendée yacht race route goes something like 200 miles outside anything established that we know of. That's kind of impossible, folks. Even if this is not completely in spec with the landmass size and everything else, you would need years in a little rowboat. Doesn't matter if it's a freighter or a super freighter. Doesn't matter if you put turbine engines on it that can go 500 miles an hour. Water is water, folks, and it would take a long time to do this route. This would take you a better part of 5 years on any boat. Now, notice where one of the intercepting points are, and I will now start to explain what this Earth Pond 1, our home planet, is. Because I think before we start knowing whether or not the Earth is flat, whether or not the map is what we know it to be, we need to start doing some major research on some of these names to see just what might actually come up. Some of them will come up, some of them will not. General names like Casey, Dumont, Scott, Mirage, Davis, Mawson, probably not going to come up. Soybean, probably not going to come up. Now, here's Novolazaresk. That will probably come up as something. Numoyer, probably going to come up as something. Halley, probably going to come up as something. Well, Halley, probably not so much. Here is something here. McMurdo. And look, every one of these areas, folks, has a little dot. So if you're in these areas and you have a big boat, do the mapping, and you should be able to reach this here, this little area here. If this is Australia, like I think it is, you should be able to reach Scott or Dumont, which I wouldn't recommend because there's probably military everywhere. McMurdo, you could probably research that. Now here's Ruskaya, Russian kayak. Okay, this is about 60 degrees south latitude, folks. This area right here. Now, this would be a huge part to take part in, and I would not do this with an airplane or anything like that. Now, here's the meat and potatoes we've all been waiting for. Rothera, or Rothschilds. Notice the normative Vendée yacht race route goes right through Rothera, or Rothschild, and around. That's very, very, very interesting, folks. I have yet to see any duplicate of this. I have yet to see anything that this is connected with. And damn, does this give me a long list of questions. I understand it's not the best map. I understand it's a little bit more 3D imagery than we want. This is, however, a 3D map of probably something that they use for the Normative Vendée yacht race and the possible Vendée yacht race route. And these exist somewhere, folks. Because if you look here with the pixelation, and you look here at the names, the pixelation was done alongside the mapping, the 3D mapping, as it were. Okay? This is a map to something somewhere. Now, it might have been a video game or something a long time ago. I doubt it. But according to this is called an earth pond. In other words, there are supposedly more. Do you know what that means, folks? That means what they told us, if this is true, is an absolute lie. Now, I told you I'd bake your noodle. I told you I'd get this out of the way. And let me just get this down here so that you can see this whole thing without being disturbed. I'll give you a few seconds, and I'll put back up the title. Go ahead. Freeze frame it. Do whatever you want. Find out what this is and what this is not. Thank you. But I'm not done yet. I'm just going to put the title back up here. Ugh. Sorry about that. My bad. Okay. Crutch. There it is. Okay, it wants to go up. Good. Now, this is actually very, very, very interesting, folks. I'm just going to leave this here for another couple of seconds, just so you can write down, copy with your phone, find out what this is, please. Because something tells me this is real to a point. Okay, now what I got for you is I got a short video to show you. This is a high altitude balloon in 1080 HD at 120,000 feet. Notice something? Yeah, it's kind of tilted. So it gives a somewhat of a curvature look. But this is not so curved that it uses a fisheye. So the Earth could still be flat for all we know. So this is basically the idea. Jumps around a lot. 120,000 feet, folks, is flat. Do I know if this is true? No, I do not. I know one of the reasons long-distance sharpshooters have to take into consideration the rotation of the Earth when there's no rotation of the Earth. It's because Einstein's principle of relativity says that gravity at a distance curves objects in the line of sight. Doesn't mean it's true. It's just the way it is. And that way, when they take the long distance shot or do anything long distance, they have to account for a curve in the equation. Interesting, huh? Very, very, very interesting. This is the world as you know it, folks. General map of the world. Very, very, very interesting. Alright, folks, you decide. Thank you. Probably how you remember seeing the Earth up high from a passenger plane, your plane, or somebody else's plane that you've actually flown in. This is basically what everybody remembers. This is why there's such controversy between a flat Earth and a globe Earth, a dome Earth. I've heard being called several different things. And part of that is because there's a lot of speculation as to what the... This is it right here. This is the surface, and this is where it ends. And this is kind of where it all begins, folks. The mystery. Is it flat? Is it dome-shaped? We know the globe is out, but questions remain, folks. Now, this one here I happen to love. I can't really get too big because it distorts the image. So I will show it at this point right here. This is the actual surface looks like because we've never seen one full image of the Earth from a distance to say one thing versus another. All we have are images. And when the government or any of the other international organizations show us an image of the Earth, it's usually via a fisheye lens, so it gives a it gives a curvature, and basically that's not what we see here. This is somebody took a picture out a window. This is another picture taken from somebody's camera outside of a jet. As you can see, there's a little curvature. You can see that the clouds actually do bump up a little. But for the most part, it's pretty solid. That's how we imagine the Earth to look, whether it's a dome, whether it's flat. Have a little raise here and a little raise here as the clouds touch it. But notice something. It's from the ESA, European Space Agency. This photo right here probably has some kind of a fisheye lens, and you can see somebody took it out of a window of one of the shuttles or something else along that side, probably the ISS. But this is about roughly 110 miles up. As you can see, there's a little bit